All right, welcome everybody to our November Forgotten Grapes Wine Club virtual tasting. If you hear any sniffling from me, it's because I'm a little under the weather. I picked up a cold, but I am fired up on pharmaceuticals, so I'm going to do my best to power through. Hey, look who's back with us this month. It's Allison. Hey, Allison, how are you?
Hi, I missed you guys. Sorry I missed the last two. Travels got in the way. I'm still traveling, but I'm actually on in the same time zone. So this time I'm joining.
But not the same country.
No, I'm in Mexico this time, but at least it's the same time zone. Let's see, I missed the first one I was in Sicily. I missed the second one I was in the Republic of Georgia. But now I'm just across the border in the Valle de Guadalupe. So
Very nice. You are truly our world traveler. It is quite impressive.
but
So
I missed you all.
we are very excited to have two guests in one, James and Manoli Boutzoukas. Did I pronounce that correctly? Forgive me if I.
Great job.
Okay, thank you. From Boutz Cellars. Of course, we've got everybody muted, so if you want to join in, please feel free to ask questions in the chat. We'll be monitoring that. We'll be able to ask that, and then hopefully at the end we'll open up a little bit of open up to everybody if we've got a little time at the end where you can ask Jim and Manoli any questions you have for them as well. But before to begin, as we always do, and we're going to start with the rosé. So if you want to open the rosé and get that ready to go, please go ahead and do so. But as we always begin, we would love to ask Jim and Manoli about the most memorable bottle of wine that you either together or individually have ever opened. So let us know what that is.
Want to go first on that or what? We didn't even talk to see if there was one together that we both mutually liked. But for me personally, I think a lot of the Bordeaux varieties that are grown in the Southern Rhone are really exciting. There's a specific wine that I like that I get from Pierre and Catherine Breton. It's Breton family wines. It's a Cab Franc that they make in the Loire Valley, and it's like kind of green. So if you don't like green in your Cab Franc, I don't know if you would love it, but that's one of my favorite wines that I drink with, people that like to appreciate one of those lighter alcohol, fun wines that doesn't mean you're going to pair it with food, but something just to enjoy with people that like the occasional odd wine, I guess you could say.
Yeah, interesting.
I like a good green wine when it's well made and not underripe.
I've had a couple of Bordeaux varietals from the Southern Rhone, but it's been mainly Cab. I've not had a Cab Franc from there, so that's super interesting.
Nothing like good herbaceousness. I mean, yeah.
I thought, Chris, long and hard in terms of what might be my response to that, and for me, I think wine is so much dependent on your moment, like when you're actually experiencing the wine. Mm-hmm. And you might have one that knocks your socks off, and then you come back to it sometime later, but you're not with the same people, you're not at the same site, and it may not necessarily be the same. So for me, I think the question would be more like, what was my first experience with wine, or what most important moment that I had with wine, and what was I doing? And I thought back and I said, like, well, geez, I mean, for me, what really got me thinking about wine was my first actual trip when I went to Greece. I was a young man. It was back in 71. And just to get to see, it was the first time I got to see wine being taken out from a barrel directly to drink wine directly out of a barrel. And I thought that was fascinating. And then we went, that was in Crete, and then we went to where my mom's from, in Patra, and I got to see my uncles actually stepping on grapes, and the fact that it wasn't just it was an experience. It was a celebration. The food, the people laughing, the people drinking, the people enjoying each other. It was something growing up in New York that I never got to see before. and I realized that wine was a big part of our culture. And so for me, it's not necessarily a particular wine bottle, brand, or label, but just wine in itself, and how that was, to me, my most memorable moment that involved wine.
Yep, that totally counts. We will allow that. You know, unnamed Greek wine produced by your relatives totally fits in this.
A green wine and a shiner.
Exactly.
What kind of did you get here?
A wine never named, a proper table wine.
Yeah.
I imagine not even a shiner is probably, you know, just tin cups straight out of the barrel right there.
Yeah.
But
so you have some experience of looking,
maybe once or twice. Yeah.
Yes.
So take us through your journey to ultimately creating Boutz Cellars. Obviously, Jim, you know, were born here, but your parents, your grandparents, all originally from Greece. How, you know, when did you get the wine bug? Obviously, it sounds like it was the trips over to Greece that kind of introduced you to the world of wine, but what was the catalyst to decide that you wanted to take it a step further and not just enjoy it, but produce it as well?
Yeah, well, it started pretty much when I got married and got my own home and had my own space, and started to make, you know, started with like back in Florida, which we went from New York to Florida, and then pretty much spent most of our lives in Florida. And it started with like concentrates, and then had a real desire to continue to make more and more wine, and found a contact where I was able to ship grapes from California to Florida, because you can't really grow wine grapes in Florida.
You can't at all.
Yeah,
you can't really.
Really nothing grows in that swamp.
You can grow lettuce. You can grow, you know,
real oranges.
You grow a lot, but no vines.
Yeah.
No vines.
Right. So we were making wine, and you know, the legal limit is 200 gallons, and we were making, you know, a little bit more than that, I would say. And it was a great hobby, but the catalyst to bring us exactly where we are now here in California in Paso Robles was basically, it was time for me to retire from my career. We came to Paso Robles for wine tasting a number of times. It was a moment that, even though my wife and I are very, you know, we normally plan things on a whim, we bought the first ranch here on Adelaida Road. For those of you who know Paso, I mean, I think it's a very special place to be if you're in Paso Robles. And that was actually in Walnuts. It was kind of like, okay, we're kind of looking at retirement. Maybe we should, you know, have a place where we can come and enjoy wine country. And then Manoli actually was going to agricultural school in Logan, Utah. And
Southern Utah?
Northern Utah is Utah State.
Okay.
It's like 30 minutes south of the border from Idaho. I mean, it's north Utah.
Sorry, I can never remember. I always think Logan's closer to St. George, but it's clearly northern. Sorry.
Yeah. And then so Manoli, at one time, after he'd been going to school for a while, calls me up and says, "Dad, you know the property bought in California?" I says, "Yeah." He goes, "It's a farm, right?" And I says, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, you know, I want to be a farmer." I says, well, I was okay. Well, that's a very serious comment right there. So at that point, we figured that, you know, in order for him to really and to be able to sustain, you know, we needed more acreage and whatnot. And in 2019, we bought the second ranch, and that was already planted. And so actually now, between the planting of the first property, which actually happened in 19, and the purchase of the second property, we actually have 52 acres under vine. Both of them are now fully in production.
About 200 tons we'll pull off from the two properties combined.
Yeah.
Wow. Did you say you bought the second vineyard in 2018 or also in 2019?
In 2019.
2019.
Right. Yeah. And we're very blessed, both to be able to say that we have two vineyards, and we have two vineyards in the Adelaida district of Paso Robles.
Both west side. They're both, I mean, they're completely different. They both have favorable soils. We are really lucky for sure.
And, you know, I mean, we don't have 50 acres of vine. We don't make all the wine from our grapes, because that's a lot of grapes.
Right.
We don't have that kind of distribution, nor have we, I don't know that's ever.
We don't want to do that. We don't want to be those people anyways.
But it gives you an indication of who are the quality of our sites, of our clientele, is basically The majority of our fruit is sold to Justin and Dow, Law, Eberly. I mean, you're talking about
Zanoli
wines, yeah. Talking about some pretty quality producers and pretty much how would you say strong members of the wine world, if you will.
Yeah, you know their checks aren't going to bounce. So.
Well, aside from that,
especially Dow's check, that will.
Well, that's true. Yeah, exactly. You've got 3 billionaires in the Zanoli there, so you guys are in this company.
I think the point he was trying to make is that we have good contacts of who we can sell to, but not only that, I think as far as the contracts go, it's not going towards, you know, their Costco brands or their regular cabs. We got lucky with the opportunity to get into their higher level programs where we know that the fruit is going towards something that we would want to even be able to make for our own wine. So it helps our standard of wine and farming processes go higher than they even need to be, even for where the properties are at.
The Dow's Reserve Rosé comes off of only our site and one other vineyard here on Adelaida Road. Our Cab and Cab Franc off of the Adelaida site goes to Justin's Isosceles program. So, I mean, you know, again, we're very, very blessed to be in the position that we are.
Of the 52 acres under vine, how many different grape varieties do you have, and are they mostly? Well, I know we're having a Mourvedre tonight, but so I can't say all Bordeaux varieties. But what are you?
So the first property that we got that we planted on our own, we have Cab Franc, Syrah, and Grenache. So there's just 4 there. The other property is this big, massive kitchen sink of things, and it's in like the best way possible because there's all kinds of cool things going on. That's where we have our Greek varieties planted, which I don't know if Chris, if my dad has told you anything about what we have opening up in 24, what's going to be getting bottled for whites, but
he has, and I wanted to get to that towards the end when we're talking about kind of what the future has for you guys, because I know there's some really exciting stuff and things that aren't being done at all in Paso.
Yeah, there's Cab Franc, Petit, Sirah, Mourvedre, Grenache, Zinfandel, and then we have the Greek varieties, which is Assyrtiko, Moscofilero, Xinomavro,
Ayoritico, and Vidiano, and Yatico. Did you say that?
No, I didn't say Yatico. So it's like, and all of those varieties, nobody maybe have never heard of, maybe Moscofilero or Assyrtiko, but what's really cool is watching them, having them planted next to each other and seeing how they adapt differently, because they grow completely different. And I've never gotten that experience. You know, we have big blocks, 5-acre blocks in other areas of the same variety, but when you have 2 or 3 rows of one variety and then another 2 and 3 rows of another variety, and you're walking through them and you're seeing them all grow differently is pretty special. So that one, I don't know what's the total on that. That's
how many,
almost 9 varieties on the one property and 4 on the other.
Yeah. I want to know when the Mourvedre is going to be released.
Yeah.
You know what's really interesting though? The reds for some reason are a little bit more challenging. The whites are really in a happy place. What's really surprised us was the Assyrtiko is characteristic wise is spot on to what you have from Santorini Assyrtiko.
What you would get in Greece, it's almost identical. I want to say identical because we want to be special, but it is really it's really cool the way that it's adapting to how
they're like super mineral driven,
acid, zesty,
yeah.
Right.
Cool.
Nice. Yeah, and I know this, if I remember correctly, this was the first year that you were able to harvest enough of those whites that you're doing just a small, like 1 or 2 barrels of just a blend of the whites, if I remember correctly.
2 barrels each, pretty much.
Yeah, that's correct, Chris. Yeah.
Very nice.
Very exciting.
So I want to circle back and kind of find out from Manoli how he decided he wanted to be a farmer growing up in Florida. It's, there's obviously agriculture, but that's a pretty big jump from growing up a kid in Florida to deciding to be a farmer. So how did you make that decision?
I think I was lucky enough to get to work in a cool environment of being, I was in as my dad was also in the bridge industry, I was on the ironworking side of that, and I got to work equipment all the time. We had a tree farm in Florida that was also like our kind of getaway area. I would go up with my dad and his friends, and I'd bring my friends, and it was like the guy's getaway trip. But I was running tractors and equipment and doing everything like that. And I had kind of, I don't even want to say it was a calling, but it was an opportunity, and saw the chance to get to go into ag. I went and did an internship in Paso. That was one of the parts that I didn't interrupt him earlier, but I was going to say I did do an internship here at Justin, actually.
Okay.
And that was in 2017. And I was able to see what it was like doing wine on that much different of a scale from what we were doing, 200 gallons every October with, you know, a bunch of I don't want to say uneducated Greek people, but that's what it was. All friends making wine together as a family, really.
Yeah.
And that was, you know, in conjunction with the property that they had purchased, that I said, well, hey, like, not knowing, being totally ignorant and naive about how much work a farm like this takes. And, you know, I had the idea of the romantic part of living on a vineyard and working on it. And then getting hit with the reality of, this is farming. This is not, there's no way to sneak around and make it easier by any means. So that's kind of what pulled me in, was really getting to work at Justin and then meeting so many cool people here. This place, and I think my dad can jump onto this place is so much like Greece, or at least where my parents and my grandparents are from in Greece. That when you're here, weather-wise, climate-wise, even the people, even though it's not the same language, it reminds me of what it's like being back in Greece. And there was like all of these things happening at once. So that's really what pulled me here to Paso. And then I didn't have a choice.
Your family is from Crete? Is that correct?
Crete.
Or where in
Crete?
Okay,
Yeah.
so Crete and Paso are similar.
Very, very similar. Yeah.
Yeah. Climate-wise is pretty much the same.
Yeah.
And actually, or what is it? The longitude is the one that runs long ways that where runs from Paso pretty much
right through Crete.
Right through Crete. The western part where it's a little bit further north, but yeah.
I've seen that line before. That kind of runs through northern Africa and then to Crete, and that's what they say is like the Paso climate is very similar to the southern islands in Greek. Is that the Cyclades, or I can't remember which ones they are, and then like northern Africa, the like Morocco and kind of northern Libya and that area as well.
Well, we don't have the Mediterranean here in Paso, but you know, I think that that's what makes the west side, and obviously that's a whole other conversation, but the west side of Paso Robles, I believe the fact that the west side is actually close to the Pacific Ocean,
yes,
makes a huge difference, because you have that temperature swing, and that's what we have in Greece. We have, you know, in the summertime it might be sweltering hot, and in the evening you're putting on you know, like a little sweater to keep you warm. So very, very similar. Dryness, the same kind of dryness. It's all very, very similar, and it's a great place to be here, honestly.
Very nice. So I want to talk a little bit about making wine in Florida. What were some of the challenges? Obviously, you guys were doing very small batch, or, you know, small, maybe slightly above what you're allowed. But, you know, were you literally doing it out of your home or garage? How'd you get the equipment? I'm just fascinated by that. We've had so many fun stories from some of our previous winemakers about how they got started, you know, people doing it in their basements, people doing it on the second floor of their walk-up apartment with white carpets and whatnot. So I'm interested in how, you know, what the challenges of making wine in Florida, even with Paso Robles grapes, California grapes brought over. I imagine the humidity was not, you know, not helpful for fermentations and whatnot.
So I'm going to try not to get too long on this, Chris, but this is really a funny story.
We've got another hour and 7 minutes, so we're good.
That's probably cute, okay? So I went through like a midlife crisis and bought a convertible Jaguar, and I put it in one of my 3-car garages, okay? We had a 3-car garage. We put it in one section of the garage. And then, but the thing was, I had this vision that I was going to keep this car like forever, and I wanted to be like a collector's item and all that. And so we had it in the garage, and you know, my wife, we had our own vehicles. It was like our spare car. And but every time it would rain, I wouldn't let my wife take it, whatever. And we barely drove it because I didn't want to put a lot of miles on it. And she's saying, like, what are you doing? The battery was actually, that's how little use we're getting out of it.
Kept it on a charger.
And so now me with my And so me with my ego, I didn't want to give up. Like, okay, you're right, honey, whatever. And then this thing came into my mind. I was making my wine in like this other space that I created to be able to keep the wine cool and everything like that. I said, you know what? We'll get rid of the Jag if you let me put a walk-in cooler in the place of the Jaguar so I can make my wine. And so that's what we did. I actually put a complete large walk-in cooler in my garage, and in that garage, in that cooler, I was able to put 3 barrels, and I had two 530-liter stainless steel tanks that I used for fermentation and aging wine if necessary, depending on what it was. And it also had room for storage. That's how big this walk-in cooler was. Wow. So we would actually ship grapes from California, and we had friends that would call us up and that would participate in the processing, all done, with, small but legitimate winemaking equipment, to the point that people were calling us to find out when the grapes were coming. That's how
excited. People were excited it was a big event for all of our friends and family every October to get together, to get to do that. And everybody knew their spot. Pretty much by the time we stopped and we started making wine here, everybody got the hang of their position and what they needed to get done. And they were excited about it, like he's saying.
I'm trying to imagine when you've sold your house in Florida, right?
Actually, no, we still have my mom's still there. My wife's mom is still there. My brother's there.
I'm just gonna say, I'm imagining putting a house on the market where you're like, we've got a cooler in the garage where you can go make wine.
Yeah, you have a very specific set of buyers for that property.
Yeah, no, I think, definitely, with our investment here in Paso and our life in your Paso, it's we're very much enjoying it, but we're making a transition with such a long history and being in Florida and families and friends and whatnot. It's not an easy thing to just completely walk away from.
Yes, when you do sell it, Scott is absolutely right. You're going to have to take photos for Zillow Gone Wild, the Twitter video. I think that will be perfect for it. I love it. I have to ask, what were the grapes like when they came from California to Florida? Because I mean, that's a 3, 4, 5 day, by truck journey. I imagine they were coming by truck and not train. And dry ice can only do so much. Refrigerated cars can do so much. So,
Can I start this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I didn't know anything about wine when we were making wine at the house in Florida. And now seeing the fruit as we're harvesting it, we were just finishing up harvest. He actually just told me today that we're not picking anymore, even though I'm on the farm. I didn't know.
Congratulations.
I was under the impression we maybe had one more pick. So seeing what fruit comes off of the vine in the bins and delivered to the winery, and then now remembering what it was like, the fruit coming in these boxes, and I'm going to let him, go on with the rest of the story. Completely different. I mean, it's almost mind-boggling thinking about the amount of work that went in to get it from the vineyard to the facility to ship out, and then processed to get into these wooden crates and then sent to Florida. And then all of us sitting there with crowbars, cranking open these wooden crates to then dump in the stemmer. So he can continue on with it. For me now, being farming and watching the grapes come off the vine to this is pretty crazy.
Well, another quick story. I'm going to try to keep it as quick as possible. But so after I found somebody that was shipping in styrofoam boxes, it was very, very costly. Found out about a gentleman in Ybor City, which is, if those of you know about Tampa, Ybor City was the place of Have a Tampa cigar. It was Cigar City. Is Tampa is known as Cigar City, and so there was a lot of Italians, a lot of Portuguese, a lot of Spanish people, a lot of people that came from the old country to actually make cigars in Tampa. And so, like in the early 1900s, there was a gentleman that came from Sicily and tried to grow grapes in Florida. That didn't work, and he heard about somebody from his village that left and went to Fresno, or it's actually Maduro, California. Mm-hmm. And that he was having a good luck growing grapes. So he came out and he visited with him, and he said, hey, listen, there's a lot of Italians, there's a lot of Spaniards and Portuguese, and we all want to have some wine or make our wine, but we can't do that. So they started shipping, and the family is called Papagni Vineyards in Madeira, and then it's Joe Pardo, Vince Pardo in Tampa. And so since, like, I think the night prior to Prohibition, they were shipping grapes from California to the Ybor City so the Spaniards can make their wine. So it got to at early was by train. Now it's like 4 semis full of either juice or grapes. And I actually was probably one of his largest customers for the time that I was there. And it was a bittersweet moment when I told him I'm not going to be buying grapes from you anymore. Not just from the business relationship side, but the friendship relationship side of it, because it was a long-lasting, wonderful relationship that we had. But that's how we were able to make our wine in Florida.
Very nice. So yeah, I imagine quite soupy, already starting fermentation.
Actually, no. I mean, they
did a good job.
They would freeze it, like freeze the grapes once they were harvested, and they would keep them in a frozen state, and then they would bring them to a packing house in Tampa. I wouldn't see them in a frozen state. By the time they received it, they put it in a refrigerator and a cooler, and then they would have had many customers. Like I said, it was 4 semis full, and by the time I got to them, they were fine. I mean, and it wasn't from a premium wine grape growing region, but if you're trying to make wine in Florida, it was the best thing you could ever get. It was a wonderful thing. It was a wonderful time in my life, for sure.
Very nice. I kind of want to jump onto this since you mentioned, that there were Spaniards and Portuguese. I want to get your thoughts on why Greek varietals haven't taken off in the United States as much as the Spanish, the Portuguese varietals. Obviously, the French ones have. You can find Tempranillo and Albarino quite a bit. You can find the Portuguese varietals, especially in port, but there are places making Touriga and Tintucao and Chazao. But you don't see the, Acerticos, the Ayurvedicos, the Chinomavros out there.
Well,
why do you
because Agliorico is very hard to say. Chinomavro is hard to say. No, I'm kidding.
Well, but so there are a lot of people who couldn't pronounce Tempranillo, and I know people who had trouble pronouncing Pinot Noir until the movie Sideways came out. So the language barrier is not the only obstacle.
So, Chris, that's a great question. Okay,
it's a loaded question too, because there's a lot of different reasons. Sure. But it's gonna be what you think in maybe 10, 15 years, it is gonna be where the Greek varieties are gonna be more recognized. It's just that they're late to a game for the reason he's gonna tell you now. I mean, it's tough.
So
unfortunate.
Unfortunately, Greece is an amazing place to be making wine grapes.
Yes.
Obviously, if you're looking at southern France, it's right there. Italy, it's right there, right? Why wouldn't Greece be a great place to be? The difference is that Greece has been occupied by many foreign empires pretty much consistently since the Minoan civilization. Right. It's like one after the other. And in particular, the Ottoman Empire, which happened twice in Crete, which basically didn't believe in drinking and didn't allow and oppress the population from doing that. So really, the wine world in Greece was very, very primitive. Like I mentioned earlier, you basically were drinking. Families would have their own little piece of vineyard so they can have their own wine to drink, because it was healthier than drinking, in some cases, depending on where you lived, water. As we know, the alcohol helped to sanitize it, but also the fact that they didn't have the means and methods or the knowledge to make it on a higher level, like it may have been in France at earlier dates. So they were making their own wine, with putting it in a barrel, and they were drinking out of the barrel, so that your wine, by the time you got to next harvest, got very oxidized. And so, but yet everybody did that. So there was no reason for anybody to go out and buy wine. So the Greek community, if you will, was very comfortable in drinking oxidized wine out of a barrel.
Their stand.
So there was no real market to sell wine locally. They didn't have, and it was was it 1923 when Greece truly got its independence from the Ottoman Empire.
Right.
Only in the last 20 years is Greek wineries making a tremendous stride. And so that's why Manoli's comment that I think in the next 10 years, you're going to learn a lot more about Greek varietals. And even though it's hard to say Xinomavro, I think, you know, if somebody takes a liking to drinking Xinomavro, they're going to learn how to say it. And it's going to be one of those things. And for us, we're thankful that we have an organic reason or an organic foundation, if you will, or basis to separate ourselves from other winemaking families.
James, wasn't that also part of why Retsina, the adding the herb was to keep people from
feeling it?
Yeah. I mean,
well,
it was for their enemy.
Make it bad so nobody takes it.
Exactly.
Then they created the palate for it.
Add some pine and, you know.
That also explains ouzo. So
yeah, so it was just a whole other story, but
no, that's interesting. I mean, not to turn this into a, you know, anthropological study podcast or a Zoom call, but I suspect there might also be something about how, you know, the Greeks were not the kind of New World explorers that the Spanish and the Portuguese and even the French were. And that might be just they didn't have access to the Atlantic. So they weren't seeking the New World like a lot of Spanish explorers who would bring vines over with them. And then they would get planted here in the United States and kind of, you know, become indigenous to our area. But because it seems like it's a no-brainer with the similarities in climate between, you know, Greece and California, that these would be grape varieties that would absolutely thrive in our market. So it's kind of a little mind-boggling that they, not even from a, you know, consumer standpoint, but just more people planting these grapes, which can really thrive in this type of an environment.
Yeah, I think it's a process. I think it's going to happen over time, as Manoli said. Of course, that's what we're hopeful for, and we're very proud to be in a position that we were in.
I mean, even now, there's other people. We have a Lebanese friend who actually planted 3.5 acres of Assyrtiko last year here, Paso. So he knew that. I mean, we're friends, and he knew that we did that. But he's looking at it. He went to school at Davis, and he has friends all over Greece, and they're telling him what the market is looking like for what people even in Greece and in Europe are looking for. And this guy's been telling him, like, you need to plant Assyrtiko. It needs to be planted all around. And the fact that it does so well, out of all of the varieties that we planted here, the Assyrtiko actually looks like it's handling and adapting to Paso the best. So like I was saying, is like, who knows if we could find one of these reds that's really going to be happy here.
Yeah.
The Xinomavro actually is probably the red out of all of the ones that we've planted. That's the red that's doing the best, and the Assyrtiko is the other one.
The Assyrtiko, that's interesting, because I know the only other place where I've had domestic Assyrtiko is in Sassoon Valley. There's a small amount planted up there, just on the backside of Napa.
I don't even know where that is. I don't know.
Yeah, it's near the town of Fairfield, kind of on the East Bay, like Allison was saying, just east of Napa.
Sassoon Valley is literally called the backside of Napa. So, in fact, when you drive from Napa to Sassoon Valley, it says, "Welcome to the backside of Napa."
There's a Greek joke in there, but I'm not going to make it.
Yeah, we'll leave that alone.
Yeah.
So we had the good fortune, I guess, just about 3 days ago, we had a gentleman by the name of Ari Tselepos, who is the son of the Tselepos family that has a huge winery operation in the Mea, and also has vineyards in Santorini. Okay. Anyway, he happened to come to visit with us, and he went through our Vidiano and our Moscofilero and our Assyrtiko, and he is they're very much well known for their Assyrtiko and their Moscofilero, and he was very much surprised on how much our wines, from a characteristic standpoint, represent very well with what you would expect from those three varietals. So that was a true, like, for us, it was like a good vote of confidence.
Yeah, big stamp of approval right there.
Especially being a 3-year-old vine. Like, it's not like these are 10-year-old vines and they've now matured and you're really getting the characteristics like what you would expect. Like, it's a 3-year-old vine and we're making it, and the guy is telling us that it's so spot on with what you would expect when you're drinking a wine from the region or coming from Greece. So that's pretty special. I mean, it's exciting.
And I think, Chris, you might have heard this before from other folks that, and I've heard it, and I didn't understand it until you actually have a vineyard and you're actually making wine. It takes 5 years for you to really understand your vineyard. And it takes 5 years for you to really start to develop your wine.
Yeah.
And so for us in our first effort, to be able to get that kind of response or comment, and for us, we when we go to Greece, and we do go to Greece every year, we do spend a lot of time doing research and development.
He goes to Greece every year. Farmer's not going to go to Greece every year.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say you're strapped to those vineyards, Manoli.
No.
Yeah.
Nice.
No, but I think we're on the right track.
Well, speaking of research and development, let's talk a little bit about your MELISSES rosé. 50% Grenache, 50% Mourvedre. Take us through the production of this. All the fruit from the same vineyard, and at what point did you decide to make a rosé?
So our Grenache block and our Mourvedre block are right next to each other. And the first year that we bought our vineyard, we had a couple clients come in and pick, meaning clients, other wineries looking to purchase fruit, and we kind of
we dove in. I mean, it was the same thing with what happened with the vineyards. As we looked at it, we were like, okay, well, these people are picking this time, even though these are red grapes, they're picking it this much earlier, as opposed to picking when it's 24, 25, 26 bricks and Saugnéing and then having to water back.
Right.
They're picking it when this acid is correct.
Yeah.
Why don't we give it a shot and see what we can work with? The fact that they're right next to each other, why don't we just pick a little bit further into the row and do the exact same thing, meaning picking time, and then with our own style of our own adds of, whether we need to adjust the acid or if we need to adjust the alcohol. And from there on, then it goes into how much skin contact you want and whether you want to barrel ferment, and that's going to be more on his side of the field. But as far as the vineyard, they're spot on right next to each other. And the Mourvedre's always a lot later, but it has very important flavor, I think, in the Grenache. It's not, our Grenache or our rosés are a lot. They're a lot more weighted than other rosés that I've had before. I don't know if.
Well, a lot of rosés are the victim of basically Saugnéing your Grenache or Mourvedre when you're making your reds.
Right.
And this MELISSES was not. It was basically picked at a time specifically to be made into a rosé. And I think that's why you have the crispness, and I think that's why you have the freshness and the liveliness that you have in this. I also, at the time, I should preface that my experience of making wine in Florida, I never did any whites. It was always reds because they were easier in terms of, concern with oxidation. And dealing with a white grape coming from California all the way to Florida was something that I was not willing to try, because this was totally as Manoli said, like, we dove in, and I think the result was pretty good. I think this is a very fresh, good. I love the color too. I think it's not too dark salmony. I think it's a true rosé made from grapes, intended for rosé, as opposed to a victim of Saugné.
So how did you decide on those particular blocks for rosé, as opposed to, making a red wine out of them?
Well, this is like a Provence kind of southern France kind of rosé, and I kind of like that style, actually. I think Grenache and Mourvedre complement one another. And again, it takes us back to the comment earlier where we're very blessed to have the vineyards that we have that give us this wonderful fruit. And the original layout was a Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre, all in order. The blocks are adjacent to each other in like 3,000-foot rows. They're like amazing. And so it just seemed like a good fit for us, Chris. I guess that's the straight up answer for that.
Got it. Sorry, I wanted to ask about fermenting in neutral oak barrels, because that's really something that's novel for a lot of rosés. Most of them are, strictly stainless steel fermentation, aging. But why did you decide neutral oak for this rosé?
Honestly,
because no one else is doing it.
I didn't have a stainless steel tank to put it in.
Fair enough.
But I also know that it's not totally unique. I think they do that. They do that in France with certain areas and certain regions. And I actually loved it. And this one did not go through Malo. The previous version, believe it or not, aged in neutral oak barrel, went through Malo. A little bit more weight on the palate, but I actually like the comment earlier. It takes 5 years for you to develop your wine program, your desire, or your understanding of what fruit you have and what you can do with it. We haven't done one that's been through that yet. We're probably going to do that again at some point in time.
Nice. Do you think you'll keep the percentages about the same, that 50-50 split between the Grenache and Mourvedre, or is that something that might change year to year depending on crop and, just what's tasting good?
I don't know.
I think they accent one another really well. Even in this allocation that I think you guys got, you only got the Mourvedre, but if you were to have our red wines, if you were to put the Grenache as our red, which is our Labyrinth, next to the DASOS, which is the Mourvedre that you guys have, seeing the two of them together, if you put them in the lighter aspect of picking at 21 bricks, 22 bricks with like 3.1 pH, the way that they mature, they work well together. And the fact that they're right next to each other is almost like a blessing in disguise, because we just say, okay, the rest of the rows go to everybody else. And these two rows that are right next to each other, we're just going to pick them as we go. And it ends up being where we can make this rosé that, again, I think it's more weighted, but the acid is still hanging in there. And that's probably a culprit from the Mourvedre being a little bit less ripe, meaning less sugar, but having like an abundance of acid, which really brings, this is like an ageable rosé, which is really cool. It doesn't have to be a 2022 rosé for it to be super fresh. This is still extremely palatable to be eating with fish, or have all kinds of bright flavors and like zesty, and like it's exciting for me. Personally, that's just what I pick up. I think in the future we're just going to continue making Grenache Mourvedre 50-50. I think that's where
as a rosé, it is very fresh and bright and has lots of acidity. But to what you said at the beginning, it's weighted, and so to have the weight with the acidity is this interesting sort of balance, because you get the weight first and then you're like, whoa, no, it's fresh, it's bright, it's got it all. Yes. And apparently Benjamin says it's going to be a perfect pairing, or is a perfect pairing, with spicy Mexican food. So
yeah, we always love to ask our winemakers what food pairings they love to pair their wine with, or what they think are ideal pairings. So you mentioned fish, you mentioned zestier flavors. Like what other food items would you guys pair with this?
I would love to drink this with raw oysters. Actually, I don't know, maybe raw oysters with a little bit of horseradish on there, and but definitely almost any kind of real seafood, especially would you say grilled seafood? Like
that's it. I grew up in Florida, like we've talked about. So for me, I grew up around seafood. When I think about it, like to be able to drink this with it is right on par. The thing is now in next year when we're gonna have our bottled Greek whites, he said grilled octopus. Yeah, exactly, Benjamin. That's good.
Yeah.
I think that when we have our Greek whites and we have the Assyrtiko, how are we going to sit there and choose whether we want to have this rosé with our seafood, or if we're going to have, you know, what the Greeks would be drinking in Greece with their seafood, like an Assyrtiko white, you know, like that. It's going to be a difficult. I mean, what kind of big problems do we have that we have to pick and choose which
that's
wine?
one of those, you know, why not both memes at that point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly.
you open both up. Awesome.
Start
Well,
with
that's
one and put another one.
exactly. Well, that's a nice transition. Oh, before we jump off that, the name MELISSES, take us through, because you have very distinct Greek names, I know, that are kind of tied to the history of Crete with each of these names. So take us through the name MELISSES and what it means.
You want Maria to come in and do this?
She's over there, but I don't know. She's not ready for it.
My sister, the artist, is here, actually, the person that does all of our labels. I don't know if she would want to or not. Maria, you want to? You want to tell them what MELISSES means and why we pick that for it on the spot?
Yeah, on the spot. No warning whatsoever.
She has no idea.
She's an artist. She's camera shy.
Yeah.
Right, Maria, come here.
I'll just stand here. You can speak.
So this is my daughter Maria.
Hi, Maria.
Hello.
She actually is the person who has drew all our labels, and a big contributor to the whole concept of, you know, what the branding should be and whatnot. So
Really a family operation.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
Definitely.
Yeah. And you know, Mama Mia, my wife, is the bean counter as always. You know, she's the one. But anyway, so they were asking like the story behind the MELISSES. Do you want to share that, or you want?
Sure, yeah. So I mean, I don't know if you said this already, but everything that's in the Heritage series, all of the graphics represent something that's a part of our culture, of the Cretan culture, and the MELISSES is two honeybees. So meli in Greek means honey, and MELISSES is honeybees. So it's two honeybees working together, and it's basically all about, like, this symbolism is all about basically working together to be able to
create something, which the 50-50 between the Grenache and the Mourvedre is the two of them making it. And as the question from before about being like, okay, well, are we going to continue to use Grenache and Mourvedre? And it's like, they complement each other so well. So the fact that it's the two bees and they're rolling this,
they're carrying together the pollen basically to
make their honey is the whole background of it.
And what's really cool about this graphic specifically is that it comes from the Minoan times, which is, you know,
ancient Crete.
Yeah,
not ancient Greece, ancient Crete.
Ancient Crete.
And it's a piece of jewelry. So it was a piece of jewelry that was actually found. That's from like 5,000 years ago or something like that. Like,
oh, wow.
I just think it's really, really special. It's such a cool symbol. And, like, you know, especially as a family working together to do this whole project I mean, there's so much to this itself.
When we found, obviously it was from 5,000 years ago, there was lots of archaeological interpretations of what it represents. When we found out that there's an interpretation that says that it represents teamwork because the two bees are working together to carry the piece of pollen back to their hive, we said, wow, this is like so much us working together to try to create this brand and this vision of what it is that we're working towards. So that's how we ended up with the label.
Nice. And Maria, did you also do that hand lettering in addition to the drawing, or?
No, the hand lettering. So one of my really good friends is a graphic designer professionally, and an absolutely incredible one. And we work together on projects where I'll do artwork and she will do the graphic design. And I actually have my degree in graphic design, but it's not my favorite thing to do.
She created that font, right?
Yeah, she actually created the font. So she hand drew the font specifically for these labels.
The extra irony in this is her last name is
no, her name is her first name. Her name is Melissa, which is MELISSES, which is part of it all. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
nice.
She created that font actually as our own lettering.
Yeah, no, like just looking at it, you can see that clearly. I mean, with the gaps and the scratches and lines, it's definitely like somebody, that's not something that you're going to find in your, you know, myfonts.com or whatnot.
Definitely not. No.
So since we have you here, we might as well move on to the DASOS and talk about the DASOS.
Yeah, so this is really, really cool because this is actually from a photograph that I took of Manoli walking in the woods. And we had a fire on this property. So the trees were all burned and it was all foggy that day. And so this is a drawing that comes from that photograph that I took of him. I mean, I don't know, like
it would have been
15 years ago, maybe
2009, 2010.
Yeah. Yeah. And so with that, I mean, they'll probably talk about the notes and everything of that wine, but it's very earthy and just that specific photo, that's probably the only one that doesn't really match our series, would you say, right?
Yeah, as far as the heritage series goes, the DASOS is the only one that doesn't have anything to do with the Cretan culture, but the fact that we have the Mourvedre and we were making this wine that it is earthy and forest floor, and the picture that was there, it really, I think it really goes in all together. I think that it's pretty cool, and I'm not trying to be biased because it's a picture of me. I actually like Mourvedre a lot.
So and actually, it was Manoli. It was your idea, really, that the Mourvedre, because it reminded you of the forest floor, that you thought that would be.
I just think Mourvedre is a really, really cool variety, and yeah, I mean, it is mushroom and earthy and all of these things. I mean, and the fact that you look at the picture and she's talking about it was this huge forest fire. All of those trees are dead, but they're burnt, and you just have like these stubs that are sticking out. And I didn't even know that she was taking this picture. I was walking ahead of her. We were going out to this food plot, and she just so happened to take this picture. And then now, all these years later, to make it into a label is also really, really special.
It's really cool, the faint green that's behind it.
Yes.
Sorry, I had to turn on a light up close to kind of see it. But where's Manoli in the picture?
He's on the bottom right, so like the figure that's walking away in the photo.
Got it.
That's his back wearing a hoodie with a hat.
It was a bird.
I don't know if I'll be able to pull up the actual picture. I can try to show it on the screen. I mean, that would be pretty interesting. Just so
is that a bird? And the name DASOS, what does that mean?
So DASOS is forest in the Greek language.
Found it.
Yeah, DASOS means forest in Greek. So let's see if I can make this happen. This is the original from what it was. So this is reversed on the camera because I'm showing it on the Zoom call. But that's the original photo of me walking, how foggy it was, what it actually looked like.
That's amazing.
Very cool.
Very nice.
Yeah, that was our, and we still have it. It's our tree farm.
Our burnt tree farm.
The burnt tree farm that got hit by lightning and caught fire and basically left us with a bunch of dead trees. But anyway,
give it a few years and they'll come back. There is life within those trees. That's the
no. Actually, we actually replanted that already. That was a long time ago. So.
Okay, good.
We're farmers now. We're actually farmers now, so we've got it figured out.
You're arborists as well. It sounds like so. You're not only enologists, but you're. Yeah. So this was actually the one wine that we opened this on Monday when we had some pizza, and it was absolutely delicious. What I loved about this was you got those mushroomy forest floor notes like you were saying, but at the same time it's a lighter and brighter style of Mourvedre. To me it was very acid driven, more than a lot of other Mourvedre that I have had. It had a lot of brightness, even a little jamminess to it that made it so delightful and just really, really easy to drink.
I'm gonna step away, but it was really nice to meet y'all.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you for explaining things. So nice to meet you.
Yeah, of course.
We may call her back later.
Yeah, if you call
that's
me,
true. We've got two more to go through. So
yeah.
What's cool, Chris, is we picked our Mourvedre last Thursday. Today's Thursday. Yeah, last Thursday we picked our Mourvedre this year, and the pH is still sitting at 3.49. So to be that late in the season and for the pH to be that high and the TA to still be hanging on, it like you're saying, it is acid driven. The bricks, it has a hard time ripening, which Mourvedre is known for. And with this cool of a year, as far weather, the way that the weather was all summer, the bricks weren't getting up there, but the acid was still hanging around. So now we picked the stuff this late. So we have all this physiological ripeness where we have the fruit there, but the acid is still hanging in there perfectly. So in 2019 and 20 and 21, which eventually we'll release, you're drinking the 20, it's the same story. It's always a little bit later, the acid's still hanging in, and the fruit's just getting to the point where we're saying, okay, this is enough fruit for us to have some body.
So I'm going to say again that we're very blessed because of the sites that we have, because this like, you know, in winemaking is, you know, now that we've really gotten very much involved in having the benefit of working with other people in the industry and whatnot, you know, it's very difficult to get a grape to be physiologically ripe and to be chemically, or its chemistry to be in balance.
Mm-hmm.
And there'll be times where you need to do acid adds. There'll be times where you need to do water adds. You need to be able to bring the wine in balance. But this block continues to deliver, when it's physiologically ripe, of a juice that you don't really need to do anything to it. It's a very, even though it looks, I mean, if anybody, we always invite anybody who wants to see where we are, what we do, they're welcome to come. It's the ugliest vine. It looks like death, but yet that's Mourvedre characteristically, basically, and everybody has the same problem. But we're very lucky to have this block the way that it is.
Yeah.
Wine. What is the vinification technique? Is it what's the oak program on it? No oak?
It is all, it's all American oak, and probably the majority of it is neutral.
Actually, you say on the back 18 months and 50% French, 50% American oak.
Oh, so it's 50-50.
Yeah.
No, it's 100% American oak on this.
Yeah.
Do you have a different bottle than us, Chris?
This is the 2019. This is the one that we've got.
Oh, they have the 19. We're drinking out of the 20.
Oh.
So the 19 is 50-50.
Okay. But then you move to full American.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So why?
And it still is neutral. It's always, I mean, what we decided was to switch everything over to 100% American oak, but we probably like 20% new oak, and the rest of it is neutral. And like neutrals meaning old neutrals, like 7.
Interesting. So, you know, you guys are one of the first wineries I've heard of that's working with Mourvedre and American oak. So why? Obviously, it's neutral, so it's not imparting that much. But why that shift? What did you find about American oak that worked well with this varietal?
I don't know. To be honest with you, that's an honest answer. I mean, we had I don't have there's certain wines I think that work very well with American oak. And we kind of been trying to go through that process where we're discovering what we want to do. And I think that was part of the process.
I think the American oak, you know, everybody's got their own, not ideas, but their own palette of what they think it brings to the table. And really, you don't get into it until you start doing barrel tastings and barrel samples of, you have, you know, a neutral oak, an American oak, new American oak, and a new French oak. And you're sitting there smelling and you're tasting, but then you're also trying to see, okay, in 2 years from now, when this is bottled, where is this how much of this is going to fall off? Where is it going to be sitting? And I think that in 20, when we were drinking the 19, we said, this doesn't need the program for French oak. And maybe the American oak brings a little bit of the spiciness, a little bit of that more coconut flavors, as opposed to this soft vanilla stuff that you might get from French oak. Like, we want it to be, if it's called DASOS, if it's called the forest, and it's supposed to be meaty, sweaty, and I know those probably aren't like the greatest terms, but in my opinion,
we know what you mean.
I'm honest. I told you that I like the green Cab Franc from the Loire Valley. Like, that's, I would rather be honest about it than sit here and try to like spruce it up for something that it's not. And I think that the American oak really complements it. So in the 2020, and again, I think Mourvedres need more time to drink. I think they should be shelved a little bit longer to really start to present what they're supposed to taste like. But the fact that you're drinking the 19 and the 20 isn't helping my case while I'm drinking this and you guys are drinking that. But
well, the 19 is very approachable at this point. I mean, it definitely it went down smooth.
I think my favorite wine. We were actually just talking about it earlier. It's my favorite wine in the program that we have.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, brilliant wine. Benjamin just wanted to confirm this is 100% Mourvedre on this.
Yeah.
There you go, 100% Mourvedre.
Yeah. It was 6 barrels of it from what I remember. I think we actually pulled a barrel out of it and put it into one of our blends that we made. If you would think, are you giving it as a more of a question? Are you curious why does it taste like there is something else in there? Or you're expecting more tannin? He's writing.
Expected more tannin, but finds it very drinkable. And Benjamin, did you expect more tannin as a 100% Mourvedre, or yeah, jump in.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Normally when I've drinking, when I've drank 100% Mourvedre, they're very tannic, they attack your tongue, and I got to be eating something or have some fat or something to go with it. And so I was like, okay, let's give this a go. And then but it's very approachable. It's delicious. It's a great structure, and it's really easy drinker.
I think there's two things working in this on this. One is the age. If you're drinking the 19. The other thing is I couldn't figure out, because we have a very close friend of mine who's actually was the wine educator over at Justin, and he kept on, because he tasted my wines that I was making in Florida. And he was saying, James, you have something different about the way that you're making your wines. And I couldn't figure out what it was. And until we started working at Custom Crushers, where we're working alongside other winemakers, most people like to really press when they're really super dry.
So they're getting extended maceration. They're getting all of these extra super tannins and long chain proteins and all of these things where
the phenolics and all this stuff that is imparted into it. Yeah.
Not that that's a bad thing.
No, yeah.
It's just it's a stylistically.
It's a stylistic thing. Yes, absolutely.
More skin contact.
Yeah, more skin contact means more extraction. I think more extraction, while people might be sitting there going, "Oh wow," and all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, it may not result in an approachable wine. I like to press when I got 2
1 grams left. 2,
3, 1, depending on the varietal. Like we'll be going to our Petit. I like to press the Petit when it's like with 4 bricks left. On it, and I think that
not letting it finish fermentation. He likes it to settle. Yeah. He likes to press it off and let it finish fermentation in barrel or in tote, so it doesn't get all those extra super concentrated flavors. And when we get to the TAVROS, the Petit, I mean, I think it's the perfect example. And what you're saying, Benjamin, is that it's more approachable. It's not ripping your tongue off. You can have this Mourvedre as the opener of the night when you have a charcuterie board, or you have, you're just like snacking on things, as opposed to a lot of the Mourvedres, like you're saying, it's huge and you have to have food with it. Otherwise, yeah, exactly that. Like your palate is just getting like a sponge.
Yeah. I've been drinking through, since we moved to our new house, I've been drinking through a lot of the stuff that was in our cellar, kind of, lost in cupboards before. And I had a whole box full of Mourvedre from 2009 to like 2012, 2013 that I've started drinking through. And, 10 years of age have softened those, but you can still really pick up the tannins, the darker fruit on it, the richness. You can get some coffee notes on some of them. But this one to me was just so, it still had weight, it still had depth, but there was a lightness, a vibrancy to it, which I really enjoyed. I had this with like a chicken pizza with a creamy garlic sauce, and it worked well with it. It didn't overpower the flavors of the pizza. It really worked nicely together.
Great, thank you.
Yeah,
they're great comments.
Yeah, it's nice hearing feedback. Mourvedre is a hard one. This might be too much information. It's a hard one for people to sell to, because they don't know anything about it. They don't know I'm saying a lot of people, the average wine consumer has no idea what Mourvedre is.
And this is what I guess to support Manoli saying. Obviously as a budding wine brand, if you will, trying to be able to get their wine in people's mouths, which is a thing that Manoli actually said, and I think it really makes a lot of sense. If for us, we're trying to get our wine in people's mouths so they can taste and understand who we are. We're obviously courting different distributors and stuff, and they come back and they tell us, like, the wine's the Mourvedre and the Petit, like, oh, wow, it's so awesome, but you can't sell it. We want, you sell cab very easy. But you know what? Once you get past the understand, like this shell of wine, this understanding of what the palate has been used to, and just like really get comfortable and experience or take your tasting as an experience and figure out what you really, really like, you might find that, the world doesn't revolve around Cabernet and Chardonnay. There's more to the wine world. And Mourvedre is a perfect example of that. And I think when you get to our Petit, you'll see the same thing.
Well,
Nice.
I'm just going to tell you before we move on to the next wine that I'm going to sneak out a little early because I have my last dinner of the night here. And while I'm going to be drinking their wine, we're having steak, and I'm bringing this wine because this is going to go with steak.
Love
So,
it.
but on that note, what do you guys like to pair this wine with?
Well, I mean, like I said before, I think that this is the opener wine for me. Like, if out of all of the wines on our program, other than our Grenache Labyrinth, I think that you want this. You want the DASOS?
No, whatever we're going to next. We'll go to LABRYS.
I think that it's a good opener wine if you're having a party and you have a plate out and people are sitting there snacking on chips and salsa or charcuterie. They have different kinds of really different sharp cheeses and heavy cheeses. I think that that's what it goes the best with. But it's definitely capable weight wise of being able to handle any kind of barbecue or any kind of meat. I think.
Yeah, I could definitely see this with something with a little smoke to it, like a tri-tip.
I wouldn't have it with seafood though. I wouldn't have it with raw oysters like we were talking about before.
No, raw oysters might be much, but actually what would be interesting is like a seared ahi tuna would be quite interesting with that, because it's got that meatiness, especially like a pepper crusted, where that would be awful nice. Because I think as Ben was pointing out, I think the spiciness, a spicy food, something that's got a little peppery or a chili note to it, will this will kind of, those acids will help quench that a bit and tamp them down a skosh, which would be nice. Beautiful. Well, speaking of traditional varietals, let's move on to the LABRYS, which is what I like to refer to as the quintessential Paso blend. There are certain wineries in Paso, certain French winemakers who came to Paso specifically to make blend Cabernet with Rhone varietals. So this is a nice example: 75 Cab, 25 Syrah. Take us through the production of this, because I imagine this is kind of a flagship for you guys.
Well, our first vintage of our own wines was in 2019. We made a very small production of the LABRYS. It was 25 cases, I believe it was, and it was 50-50 Cab Syrah. And the Syrah that we got this from was from the block that is
now taken out.
Yeah, we actually pulled that block.
It was a Straya Syrah. It was a specific clone that was not happy for how old it was, where it was, the way that it was farmed. It wasn't a happy grape. I mean, it's hard for me to sit there and rip out acres of vine, especially when people were still buying it. But right. the numbers that were there just wasn't. We weren't happy with it.
And so I think we went to the 20 vintage that we kind of reduced the Syrah in the blend. But the interesting thing is that this particular offering actually won last year in the Los Angeles Times Best of Class Double Gold.
Wow.
This is actually a wonderful wine in my opinion. I think that some people call it the Aussie blend, where the Australians love to put Cabernet with Syrah.
Yeah, Chris, you mentioned that the French people that are here in California want to do that, and we have a French guy that helps us and talks and gives us advice and says, I mean, you could call him a consultant, but so he's this French guy, full blown accent and everything, and he calls it the Aussie blend. So it's funny when a lot of us are saying, oh, these French people do all these things, but then the French people come along and they say that the Australian, like, nobody wants to take, I don't even want to say credit
for it. They want to blame somebody else for it.
Yeah. If something goes wrong, they don't want to take the fault for it. But so they say it's okay, this is the Aussie blend, as opposed to us saying the French people like to make this style. So, but 75 and 25, I think we've hit it now, where we know that this is what it needs. And obviously each vintage will be different. Now we have a different clone of Syrah that's going to get blended in. So it'll be interesting to see what we're going to do this year.
Yeah, with different clone and different site. Actually, we didn't replant Syrah at what we call Boutz Ranch. What we call one Boutz Ranch, the other called Kedros. We planted the Syrah in Kedros, and we we're super thrilled about the results that we got on the first vintage that we pulled from this vineyard.
It'll be our first reserve wine.
Yeah, we felt that putting that towards the LABRYS was, I don't want to say doing it an injustice. I mean, but it was like that.
It's the fruit
so superior that it's like, okay, we need to call this one a reserve. So we didn't make a LABRYS after in 2021. But I think the LABRYS will return now because I think there's a number one. I think
it would be silly if we got double gold on something, got 99 points, and then we didn't make it.
Right.
So 22, we're going to make it again, but 21, we did actually skip that year, and we put all of the drive towards the Anguilla, which is our 100% cab label, and not having Syrah planted at that point in production, we were unable to do it anyways.
So I mean, I'm tasting this, and I'm saying like, wow, like it's a full bodied, got wonderful flavor. There's fruit there, but and it's still alive. It's got a lot of acid. It's a wonderful wine, in my opinion.
Yeah,
a nice theme of acidity in your wine.
Yeah. I mean, I think that pick dates has a lot to do with that too. I think Paso, I should say just Paso. I think a lot of people have this idea that wines need to be like super big, super extracted, and the truth is that's really what gets you good scores, right?
Which is unfortunate, but
yeah. But I think approachable, I think balanced, I think having a little bit of acid to like sort of excite the senses on your palate. I think that's
we're Greek. We want to eat food, and we want to be able to drink wine with the food, and it doesn't need to be these massive bombs that you can't even enjoy your food because your tongue is just got ripped off. So for us, like, we want it to still be like palatable, enjoyable. You want to drink before, you want to drink after, and I think that us being as culturally involved as we are, I mean, I'm blessed because of him to be as culturally involved as I am, but all of that comes into play with style of the wine that we want to make. And it really is different. I mean, our neighbors on either end of the properties it's completely different style. So for you to notice that the acid is very prolific and that you can see it coming out compared to other wines that you might have had from Paso means a lot, because we work on that.
Yeah, I mean, well, I totally agree with you. Acidity is your friend with food pairings, and that's what you want. And each sip for each wine, it's just wow. Like, I'm hit by the acidity and to Benjamin's point earlier, like not what you necessarily expect from some of these reds, or maybe what we've been drinking in the past from this region. They might have acidity, but it's not the dominant character. And this is just, it soars right over.
Yeah, well, and especially with Cab and Syrah, which are two of the most over-extracted grapes that you'll find in Paso. I mean, it seems like the recipe for both of those among a lot of people is just to do, heavy, like 3-4 week macerations to, full fermentation, and then press that off and try to get maximum color, maximum tannin to raise that profile. But having a lighter style wine, I think, actually, my feeling is that's what consumers today are kind of leaning towards. Most of them like a lighter style. They still want body. They still want to know they're drinking a red wine, but you're right. You don't want to blow out somebody's palate after, a glass and a half. You want them to be able to enjoy that one, open a second bottle, and still be able to drink it through the night.
Right.
And I think Stacy summed it up pretty well, which is it's a great surprise because you have assumptions when you look at the blend, but then you actually taste it. So.
Yes. And the name LABRYS, one of the things I love about your labels is you do a nice explanation on the back of the name and the history. So LABRYS, the double-headed axe, which is important to Minoan culture, obviously representing the Cab, and the Syrah, equal sides of it.
Right.
And it started off as 50-50, and we ended up changing it to 75-25. But to change the label for how cool, I mean, this is my favorite label. The Mourvedre is my favorite wine, but the label wise, I think that this is one of the cooler ones. And again, Maria was the artist on all of this and creating this.
Well, and this journey for us in creating our brand, even though we're Greek specifically Cretan, and thinking that we know everything about who we are and our culture and our background and history. In doing research and developing this label and whatnot, was not aware, because you think of the axe, you don't think of it as a feminine thing. But when we did the research and we found out that the double-headed axe was actually during the Minoan times said to be carried by women
only,
and that the majority of the Minoan civilization was actually led by women, which is it blew me away, because if you know Greek men, especially Cretan men, that's not in line, if you will.
They want to be the macho man,
right? Yeah. So and me and Manoli, out of a family of 5, are the 2 males, and there's 3 women, and they're all awesome, and they all have their own identity, and they're definitely all leaders and individuals. And so we thought this was a great way to be able to say thank you to the girls in our family.
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
Absolutely. So let's talk food pairings with this one. What are you guys typically pairing with this blend and something this light? I mean, normally you see a blend like that, you go, oh, this is a ribeye, this is a porterhouse. But I think, obviously it would work with that, but I think there's a lot of versatility with this wine.
I'm just thinking, I just took a sip of it. I said pepperoni pizza.
There you go.
No, we talked about it a little bit. I mean, we have the Garages Festival this weekend, and we're going to have, questions the same kind of similar. I think that it really still is. It's all of the wines are great food wines, but this really is a steak wine. I mean, you could do grilled vegetables and stuff like that. Like anything on the grill would be really good. It's got enough acid to be able to cut through the fat of any kind of meat that you're going to cook, whether it be ribeyes or, I mean, there's all kinds of things. I've gotten to the point, I don't know, I feel like I look at wines now as like, what is that not going to go with, to make sure I don't waste that wine, because I want to enjoy the wine so much with my food that I look at it and say, okay, that wine's not going to go with that.
Wow, that's a pretty interesting perspective. That's cool.
No, I mean,
it's like a negative space. I like it,
but in a good way. Like, I know this wine is good, I know this food is good, but why would you ruin both of them by trying to make them complement each other when they don't belong together?
Right.
Or you can always make something where he's saying pepperoni pizza, that's what's on his mind. I mean, you were talking about pizza before, and this guy's from New York, so like all he thinks about is pepperoni pizza. As soon as you said it, that's what's been on his mind.
Yeah, where can you get a good slice here in Paso?
Yeah, nowhere. Not
nowhere,
a good
exactly. You also can't get a good bagel here, but that's a whole other issue. So
yeah, they I like even what you said. I think it really is a good meat barbecued wine. It doesn't need to be super smoky. It doesn't an Oni oven. Yeah, Benjamin knows. We need to get one.
when you get the Boutz Cellar tasting room fired up, then you can.
We're gonna have a wood fire oven for sure, no matter what. I don't know if we're gonna be cooking pizzas all the time, but definitely there's gonna be some lamb in there.
Very nice.
But yeah, I don't think it needs to be smoked meat. I think it's barbecued meat, whether you're cooking on the cast iron for 2 people or you're cooking it on the barbecue. I think that's the flavors that this is going to go good with. A peppered steak. I think that's it.
Lovely. So we're just about 10 minutes left, so let's move on to the last one. There's my notes. The TAVROS right there, the Petit Sirah. And I have to admit, I am not a Petit Sirah fan. I find a lot of Paso Petit Sirahs can just be kind of everything we've been talking about, just too big overall, super high alcohol, too high residual sugar, big color, just kind of more, and it tends to be very one note and kind of flabby wines. But this one is really a revelation. And again, I think it speaks to just your style of winemaking and your vineyards, the fact that, you're really concentrating on the pH levels and maintaining that higher level of acid that should be there in a proper Petit Sirah.
Yeah, I mean, and it also the fact that we're conscious. Going back to what I said earlier in terms of the time we decide to press, I think that has a lot to do with it. Honestly, yeah. I think that in specific to the Petit Sirah, where, okay, skin contact is wonderful during fermentation. I think it brings the whole weight and value of especially if you're doing single varietal production, and you're bottling it as a single varietal, that you want it to be representative. But by the same token, you also know that Petit Sirah, obviously very strong, very tannic, can be overwhelming. You don't need to have extended maceration. You don't need to be waiting forever to press off the skins, because inherently the juice is red, as you know.
If you go into the vineyard when it's 18, 20 bricks and you eat a couple of berries of Petit Sirah, you're already stained your mouth. You go and you spit, and it's purple. The color that you get from Petit doesn't need to get to 28 bricks and get raisin to get color. Like, it's already there. And like he's saying, to be able to press it early when you don't need it, you're just beating it up. So like, looking at it as like an acid standpoint and actually being ripe standpoint, you just find this perfect little median right in there. And I mean, between the two of us, finding when the right picking time is, I think, Chris, what you said, it happens to us all the time. I mean, every time we pour at any event, everybody's like, oh no, we're not like really a fan of Petit Sirah. They're always usually either too big, or it's not like the flavor that we're looking for. And then it ends up being like, oh, this is like totally approachable. It's like, I can enjoy having this and I don't need anything with it, which is really cool. And we were like trying to figure out which SKUs are we going to eliminate, because now we have the Greek stuff going on. It's like, we don't want to eliminate the Petit because so many people love it and we like it too. I mean, we wouldn't make it if we didn't like it. So
how many cases are you guys at right now?
In terms of our whole program?
This year or in total?
Well, I guess
the annual program. Yeah. So in 20, we were about 400 cases.
More than that. 19, we were 400.
Okay. Maybe 500 in 20?
600.
Well, and then 800. This year we're gunning for about 1,100 cases.
Okay. So still very small. What do you see as your equilibrium point? You know, what are you guys targeting for growth?
Well, that really, Chris, is a business plan kind of question, right? Sure. So, in other words, I don't.
Since we have so little time, if we successfully go through with our tasting room in our winery, 2,500 cases is the max that we'll go to. Okay. I would think that 2,000 is probably where we're going to sit at, but that's the short, fast answer, because I know that we're short on time. So yeah. Is that right?
Yeah,
is that good?
You're right.
Yeah, of course. If something takes off and you have the ability to, get it widely distributed, you could, blow that out. I understand, but I think 25 is a great number. I mean, it's one where you can still do a lot of direct to consumer. You don't have to be fully focused on distribution at that point. So you can kind of maximize your gains and still really handcraft the wines. You're not moving into, factory style winemaking at that point. So
the big thing would be to have one SKU that we know that we could pound out and we can make 800 cases of, and like we can send that, so people, like he said before, is get wine to people's mouths, and then they know the brand, and then they find something else that they like. And then we have this heritage series in the reserve program where we're making 4 barrels of each of those things that are really, really fine-tuned to the exact variety and what they really should be portraying to us. And that would be, I think that's what the end goal is to be in that position where we can pick and choose exactly how we want to make each wine, with that big overhead coverage with the big production line. Not production. That's a bad way to put that. But.
Right. Stacy wanted to know, how do you figure out what level you wanted to start your maceration? Is it trial and error, or do you already have an idea of what results you'll get?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I think when you're pumping over wine or must, as what it is when you're trying to figure out whether something's over extracted or not.
Okay. All right.
If that's the question, is that?
Yeah, I think that's what she means is, not, how do you know whether to pull it when there's still 4 grams left, or 2 grams, or 1 gram, or
we don't call somebody up and say, hey, can you pump over our wine, or hey, can you punch this down? It's either him or me. He'll do the morning ones, I'll do the afternoon ones, he'll do both, I'll do both, whatever's going on. And when you're in there and your face is like in the musts and pumping over, and you're looking at it and you're saying, man, this cap, even it might be 4 grams left, or you're looking at this cap almost falling in, and you're saying, I think this is ready to go. And I think that, I don't know how you feel about it, but when I'm there, I'm like, okay, this is ready to press. I don't even need to go to the lab. I say it's low enough where it'll finish off in the barrel, and it doesn't need any more from the skins itself. I think when the cap starts to weaken and fall through.
I think, Manoli, you're spot on. And that's why, for me, for what I said earlier, that we've been working at custom crushes because our story is we're actually in a permit process to build our own facility, whatever. And so we get to work alongside with other winemakers at these custom crush facilities. And the majority of people want to press when they're completely dry. And for us, it's like, number one, I think yeast need oxygen. And when they start to get towards the end of their life cycle, and they're overwhelmed with alcohol, they need that extra oxygen.
And the press is the perfect place. I mean, it's like they're blowing up, getting thrown in this hopper, getting tossed inside of this big cylinder, and then getting squeezed and then pushed up. It's the perfect chance to give them like this big fresh air to like finish off like the last end of the marathon. It's like you just are running through and you got a shot of electrolytes.
And,
like
that's a great way to put it. And I would say that, like actually waiting till you're completely dry and then pressing, it's almost like at that point, it's almost like oxygen is no longer good for your wine. Whereas when you have some sugar left and you have this, your colony of yeast is starting to taper off, those remaining yeast, you want to give them what they want, and they want oxygen. So that's what we do. And your question is perfect because, in Manoli's response in terms of understanding the cap and feeling by virtue of being involved in the pressing process or pumping over process. And normally what we do is we'll pump over until we get to a point where we're lower in bricks and we start punching down. But that's how we end up with getting to that point, making that decision.
Yeah, it's Stacey, to answer your question. Last year we did find out the hard way. We had two different lots that were stuck, and I think it was between having full production in the vineyard and not really having our hand completely at this certain custom crush facility that we were at, where we've now changed for this year. We weren't in control of it. There was an abundance of fruit coming in all at the same time. I don't know where you are in California, but last year we had that huge heat spike, and we did like 90% of our fruit in 10 days. Like, it was jam packed and everybody was all over the place. And we did learn it the hard way, where we had lots that weren't finishing fermentation. They were getting stuck, and we were trying to finish things out, and then pressing and re-adding and doing all the, and it was very frustrating. But I think that what we've learned now, being able to do everything on our own, is, like I was saying before, is like when you're in it and you're doing your pump overs or your punch downs and you can really see that it doesn't need that, is again, it's user experience. I mean, it's so important.
Yeah, but I'll also say though, like 22 was difficult for everybody in Paso, at least. That we don't know what happens in Napa. We don't travel to, during for heaven's sakes, during harvest.
You're in a bubble from August to November, pretty much.
Yeah, right. We don't have time to play to unfortunately, because it's wonderful to see what other people are doing. But for us, we're totally involved in what was happening here. But in Paso, there's no doubt last year was tough for everybody.
Yeah.
This year, in contrast, I mean, look out, guys. 23.
This is going to be probably one of the best vintages for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like since like 2000.
Yeah. The fruit. I mean, we were panicking based, because we had shattered. We had a very long flowering period, which means, so normally fruit will set from a flower in 7 to 10 days. Well, we had flowering going on for
over a month.
It
was over a month.
3 weeks to
between all the different varieties, because they all start to flower at different times. It was over a month where we had things that were flowering. We had different kind of weather patterns from the bad shatter, and then to going into July and August, where we had mildew and everybody had mildew pressure. It was the most mildew pressure since like 2011. Everybody was freaking out, and then everybody started getting swollen berries because of the cool weather and overwatering. People were getting bunch rot, and it was like nobody knew what to do. And then like as soon as people started picking, everything leveled out. And now like it seems like everybody was able to pick exactly when they wanted, except for the fact that it's gone later than normal, which in my opinion is fine because you have more ripeness and your acid is still hanging in there because of the cool weather. So this is going to be a really, really cool year. Like to see what comes out for the whites in 24 and the reds in 25 is really exciting. Not just for ourselves, for everybody in Paso as a region.
Yeah, and I know because of the amount of rain we had during the winters and then the cooler spring into most of summer, that yields were very, very high this year. So people got, there's just a ton of excess fruit out there.
But Chris, if you would have walked through our vineyards or anybody's vineyard in July, and you would look at the clusters,
it looked like there wasn't going to be a crop.
We were like, oh my God, did we get our crop insurance in place? Is everything okay? Because we're not gonna have a. And it's amazing how it turned around. It was quite an experience. And I think it's not just for us. I think in general, Paso Robles, look out for 23. It's going to be an awesome vintage.
Well, this was the 20, and as Benjamin mentioned, 22 was a tough year in Napa because the fires in 21. Paso 20 was a tough year for us because we got so much smoke from the fires up in Salinas and also down in Montecito. Did you guys have any issues with the smoke where you were?
Well, that's an interesting question because, one of the they say that Syrah gets affected more than anything else with smoke taint and whatnot. And so we didn't have that much Syrah, and that might have been part of the LABRYS 25% component. All in all, a lot of people were saying that you'll find the smoke taint in lees. In other words, if you leave your wine, and I don't know, if everybody understands what we're talking about, but basically once you first put your wine,
when you press and then you go directly into tank or barrel, the beginning part of all of those heavy particles go to the bottom, and that's called the lees.
Right.
So the idea is as soon as after you felt like there was enough time for those things to settle, you racked it directly out, washed out those barrels, got all the lees out, and then pumped back in. So there wasn't a chance for that smoke taint to really settle in to the heavy part of the wine,
which is what we did. So we were on kind of like trying to manage through that.
Yeah, very diligent about that.
We didn't find that any of our wines had any smoke taint whatsoever.
And honestly, a lot of the people from the northern counties were coming to Paso trying to find fruit from here because of the issues that they were having up there. I lived here. He was in Greece when the fires were happening, and I remember walking out of the house and there was ash falling in the sky, like into the vineyard. And it was mind-boggling for me to see that, and like obviously being worried about what's going to happen to the fruit. But we haven't detected any of it in any of our wines, which is really nice.
None whatsoever.
Excellent. Stacy wants to know if there's a worry about 2024 with it being an El Nino year.
We are already so he told me today that we're not going to pick anymore, but all week this week, all I've been doing is prepping for erosion control, for cover crop, to make sure that we can protect the soil that's in the ground. And now that we know everything that's in full production, now that everything's at its 4th year and 5th year mark or more, we know how much fruit we're going to expect, and we know what we need to drop to. So the idea is next year when it comes around, right after fruit's set, we can sit there and we can evaluate how much fruit we want to drop, and we can really know, okay, we don't want it to be over an abundance in our Grenache, or hey, the cab can go down to 2 clusters per shoot, and we can really figure it out. So we know, hey, this is how much the tonnage we're going to get per acre. But the El Nino's for me as a farmer, I'm excited for an El Nino. I want to wash all the salts out of the soil. I want it to be where it is our fruit and not the years past of other farmers that have been, bombing the ground with artificial nitrogen, all of these extra things that have been bound up. So El Nino years are exciting, unless you're not prepared for erosion, because then you have big issues.
And I'm only saying erosion because all of our vineyards, we're not on flat ground.
20%, 25% slope, some areas 30. I mean, it's
But the question about El Nino, okay, so this past winter we had more rain in Paso Robles than we've had in a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And
42 inches was recorded in our area
on the west side, and managing that in and of itself is, I mean, you have a lot of rain, you have a lot of water, which means that the ground is saturated. I won't say saturated, but there's a lot of moisture in the ground, and so we had canopy growth that obviously, we're since 2019, we've never seen the canopy growth that we had. We actually had people coming through, our crew going through with hedgers, cutting down canopy to be able to open up the fruit zone to allow air circulation, so we can sort of ward off the fungus pressure. So, I mean, we might be getting a little bit too in the weeds right now, but I mean, really,
we dig it.
I think we've already had an El Nino here in Paso.
Basically, last year was, but who knows what's going to happen this year? We're having our first rain coming in on Wednesday, so I've been prepping with the tractors to make sure that we can get our seed down and our hay down, and that's the biggest worry. I mean, right now you're watching everybody getting their hay delivered, and they have crews out everywhere throwing hay because they're concerned about the amount of dust and what's going to happen with the rain.
Right.
This property that we're at right now, at one off of Adelaida Road, Benjamin, to answer your questions, the highest point is like 2,200 feet, 2,270. And the lowest pot is like 1,700. So it's
1680, somewhere in that.
Yeah, almost 1,700. So it jumps up. And then the other property is sitting at like 1,100 feet. So I don't know whether that's high up compared to other vineyards of what you're asking, like what you're comparing to.
For Paso, the 17 to 22 is pretty high. I mean, there's there's not a lot of other vineyards that are that high up. Obviously, the laws and some of the stuff on Peachy Canyon and whatnot gets a little higher. But you guys, it's pretty high elevation there.
Yeah. So for drainage, the same. Yeah, Benjamin. It's the bottom block here, our cab block and our Syrah block, which are on the bottom end of the property that go onto Adelaida Road. We don't water that until, I mean, if it's not super extreme weather, we probably don't start watering that until the beginning of June. I mean, the ground is still so wet that it doesn't need it. I mean, the canopy just shoots up and does everything on its own. So whereas on the top of the block at the 2,200 feet where, it gets exposed to more sun, the soil is different. We might start watering that depending again on the conditions. We might start watering that in the beginning of May, so a whole month earlier or into the end of April, depending on the rains.
Nice. So just to finish up with the TAVROS, obviously, representing the bull, and in Cretan culture, there's the myth of the Minotaur up there. I imagine because it's Petit Sirah, because it's big and bold. That was a lot of the impetus behind the naming of this wine. It's more
behind the meaning of the wine.
Yeah, the name, the TAVROS name.
Yeah, well, so if you ever go to Crete, which of course
encourage everybody,
we encourage everybody to go there.
We'll organize a trip.
Well, yeah. And that's something that's going to happen in the future. But the Minoan civilization, they say, was in existence for 5,000 years. If you go to Knossos, which they say was King Knossos' palace on the island of Crete, they had mosaics and all that of what you see, that image that we
on
have
on
that label. And that was their form of bullfighting, but it was kind of cool because it wasn't fighting the bull. It wasn't necessarily in the sacrifice of the bull, but it was more like even though bullfighting is an acrobatic feat, right? You sort of like entice the bull to charge you, and then you move aside, and you might.
These were considered dancers as opposed to fighters,
right? And so they would encourage the bull to charge them, and as it was approached them, they would leap over and some sort of somersault past the bull. And they would do that in Colosseums. And so that was part of the Minoan culture. And another one of the interesting things that I found out doing our research, again, being a very, how would you say, passionate, committed Cretan.
He's proud.
Proud
guy.
I was actually my term just finished. I was actually the president of the Pan Cretan Association of America, to understand much of. But anyway, that I didn't know that it was basically women that were the leading athletes that participated in this sort of bull interaction or entertainment, if you will.
Bull acrobatics
at the time.
Acrobats.
Kind of like proto rodeo clowns.
Right. So no, I mean that's kind of inspiration behind the label.
That's amazing.
If you go to any club, and there's actually a lot all throughout the United States, there will be, whether it's a huge mural on the wall or picture frames all over in like a certain section, the image that's on that label will be somewhere in that Cretan club. That's how much of a meaning it carries through that island and that culture of the Cretans, the Minoans.
Cool. Love it. And food pairings with this one, I suspect you might have mentioned earlier what this would pair well with. I know lamb obviously is a big Greek staple, so I suspect this is a lamb wine probably.
Lamb all the time. Yeah, I think if we're gonna go in line, there's a reason why this one goes last. We always pour it last, even though we do make it, I think, in a lighter style than the majority of the Petit Sirah producers. I think that this is where you would get into the more smoky meat. I'm not gonna lie and say that this is, a light wine. I think that it still is a big wine, but it's not overpowering. It's not unpalatable. It's not ripping your tongue off with tannins or over acidic or any of those things. But this complements smoked meat. Like if you're gonna have, you're gonna put lamb on a spit outside, or you're gonna put lamb in the oven for a certain amount of time with all kinds of herbs and spices. I think that this is what complements it very well.
Nice. Yes, it's the power of the bull with the litheness of the
there's a reason why the Petit Sirah is the bull. It's the TAVROS. It is.
Yeah, we thought that was sort of the driving factor in selecting the Petit Sirah for the TAVROS. We felt that TAVROS had a place in the program, meaning the name, but pairing it with the varietal of Petit Sirah was natural. I think it's a good fit.
Absolutely. I think so. We were talking beforehand that this is kind of an anniversary where I met you guys a year ago at the Garages Festival in Paso, Robles. You'll be pouring there again this Saturday, and I will see you and hopefully be healthy enough to taste through the wines before I open them up. But what else do you guys have? Obviously, we talked about the Greek varietals that you have coming up. What are the future plans? Any other, outside of the Greek program, any other interesting blends or varietals, single varietal wines that you guys are looking to release for the 20s, 21s, 22s, 23s?
So we have bottled already a 21 reserve Syrah that comes off of there's the first wine that we actually made specifically from this vineyard, meaning the one that we developed on our own in the first property that we bought in Paso.
Nice.
So that one will be in the new tier of the reserve program. It'll be a single variety Syrah from one block. That's really special to us. We're so excited that we bottled it without even creating a label. So now we have a bunch of cases of shiners that we're going to have to either hand label or wait till the next bottling truck to actually get labels on it.
Which is why we didn't make the LABRYS.
Yeah. So then following that into the next years, we're going to have still from the same property, we'll have a reserve cab. We're trying to decide. We did make Cab Franc, and we're going to see if we're going to blend that in and make some sort of Bordeaux blend, or make, a cab dominant Cab Franc Syrah. And then the Grenache from this property will be the first also, will be La Virinto. We've made La Virinto 100% Grenache from the other property, but now we're going to have this property coming online in 21 as well, once it's bottled.
Very nice.
Yeah. And then we have our Bourbon Zin, which is, not everybody likes bourbon flavors in wine. That's not for everybody. They're aged in bourbon barrels for, what did we do? 20 months.
Yeah.
It was a long time. But it was used bourbon barrels. And we were tasting it periodically to say, okay, well, do we need to pull it out? Is it getting overpowered with these flavors?
but then we also had there was 1 barrel Zin with American
Of
oak,
American oak,
and we
yeah.
blended 3 of them together. And it's interesting because, as Manoli said, you know, the traditional wine connoisseur, if you will, hears about bourbon barrel influenced wine and says, "Oh, they don't even give it a chance." But that particular bottling came out to be pretty impressive. And we didn't make it again because we were worried about the market. Distributors were telling us that,
how are you going to sell bourbons? And there's only, 4 other producers around the United States.
Well, it's not just that. Most of them are high production, very low price point. And how are you going to compete? You can't, and for us, everything we do is handpicked because we're on steep slopes. We can't compete with machine harvesting.
And the prices that you get the fruit for machine harvesting, and what you get for labor crews and all of that, because it's not just what you have during harvest. It's pruning and shoot thinning and crop thinning. Like, all of those things can be done mechanized now, where we can't do that. We're paying the crews to go out there and do all of that work. So the cost of all of that goes up.
But now we had a distributor that bought it,
and they want
more of it. So I think we're going to bring that back into the program to answer your question about what's in the future again for us.
Nice. And then most excitingly, obviously, we talked about the Greek varietals, and you guys will be releasing your first white with a blend of the Sertico and I think the Moscofilero and
actually, no, it's going to be three separate SKUs. Eventually there will be an Acitico Vidiano.
There'll be a Greek blend, a Greek white blend, but we are keeping them individual for right now. Who knows what we're going to do for labels? We have our Brainiac artist in there that's going to do all of that, but we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what they're going to look like. Please send us an email with ideas if you think of anything that for we have no idea yet. Yeah. So
I think it clearly has to be like a mythology series or something like that, and you need to go with like the classic Greek myths or something that people will recognize if you can. But anyway, that's fantastic, and you've already got one customer for your new the bourbon Zin, because Ben definitely wants to try that out. So if folks want to check out the rest of these wines, like the bourbon Zin, like the Greek wines when you release it. What's the best way for them to get a hold of you, or if somebody's up in Paso and they want to do a tasting, how can we do that?
So first of all, from a general perspective, we have our website. It's Boutz Cellars, boutzcellars.com, spelled Boutz, Boutz Cellars,
like what's on the labels of all the bottles.
Right. From there, it's an interactive website. You can order from there, and we'll be happy to make sure that you get whatever you're looking for. On down the road, I mean, in terms of visiting with us, we don't have a tasting room yet at this point. We will have one on the Adelaida Road site, which is a beautiful location. But that's still in the works. We're in the permitting process, as everybody knows, I'm sure.
California,
if you're from California, it's the building department permit process is very, very challenging. We're about a third of the way through. So I would say we're in 23, 24, 25 at some point.
We're half the way through.
Right. Okay.
Not a third. Come on, we will be positive here.
Yeah. So, but if you give us a call, we've done this before.
If you're in Paso, for you guys, if you're in Paso and you want to come out and hang out and see the vineyard and have some of the wines, whether he's here or I'm here, I think where he's getting at is we would love to accommodate you guys. Yeah, for sure.
We're Greek, so we love to be hospitable, and we call it parea, which is like having company. So feel free to just give us a ring, and we'll do what we can to accommodate.
Both of the work number that's on the website will get to either one of us, whoever you want to contact. And if he's in Florida, or I'm here, or I'm in Florida and he's here, we'll make it work.
I'll make it happen. There's some member of the Boutzoukas family that will meet you out there in the vineyard and pour for you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I don't know if you need to go or if you've got a minute, but if everybody wants to unmute themselves, if anybody's got any questions, if you guys can stick around, and if there's any questions,
we're here for you guys, whatever you like,
or comments or whatnot. I know Jody loved the artwork and the wines. Stacy loves your website, thinks it's very well done. So compliments all around.
Thank you guys, for real. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Go for it, Harry.
Thanks everyone for letting me join. That was awesome. Your wines are delicious. And Chris, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, our pleasure, Ben. We hope to see you in future months.
Absolutely. I left a comment. Do you guys know Greg Flynn with California Wine Merchant in San Francisco?
No.
I don't know who that is.
The reason I bring it up is my fiance and I, we just moved back to LA, but we've been living in Northern California and San Francisco for 16 years. And he's like probably one of the most connected guys in Northern California, but he has, I hesitate to call it a wine club because it's not really a wine club, but him and his wife, Deb, curate the most amazing Californian wines. And they're small producers. They're all, 800 cases here, 1,200 cases there. And he just loves rolling his sleeves up and highlighting California producers. And I think you would just be the perfect fit for his program. He moves a lot of wine, but he also has really cool tastings. He's got a really cool wine shop that he's had for like 30 years.
And he's in Southern California?
Nah, he's in San Francisco in
he's
the district on Chestnut. And he's like a wine guy. Like he's been around for the beginning of time. So if you want to check him out, if you want an intro, I'm good friends with him and his wife.
Yeah. No, please.
Your profile just fits perfectly with the
kind of show him the website. I mean, tell him to reach out to either of us. You said it's Greg Flynn, California Wine Club?
Yeah. California Wine Merchant. So he's got a retail store, a little wine shop that's been there for, I want to say like 25, 30 years. But his whole thing is, giving a voice and highlighting, winemakers, smaller producer, really heavy touch like you guys are, winemakers. And so, I've discovered the most, bonkers, ridiculous wines that are not your big, 10,000 case producers. But awesome. I digress.
No, that's great. And tomorrow, Ben, I will be sending out the link to the replay of this, and you'll be copied, and I'll also copy Manoli and Jim on it, so you can communicate through that, and that way you'll have each other's email addresses and can pass along.
Well, thanks again, everyone. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hey,
all right.
May I ask a non-wine question? When you sold the Jaguar, what kind of Jaguar did you have in Florida? I'm known as a gearhead, and I'm always interested in what cars people have.
It was a XK8.
XK8, yeah.
That's just what I wanted to know. I'm familiar with that car.
It was
candy apple red convertible with gold rims. It was so stunning.
It was so silly. It was silly, not stunning.
Clearly, it was a hard sell.
Sounds like a beautiful car. I'm not sure I could sell one like that. I can't sell cars, but they come. They don't go.
Everybody knew you were coming down the street when you drove that car.
Not really, because I rarely drove it.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Cars need to be driven. Well, thank you. The wine is excellent. This is one of the best ones we've had. Excellent wine.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well, if there's no other questions or comments, thank you guys so much for being here. Excuse me, James and Manoli. We appreciate it. You guys were awesome. Very, very informative. And I think you made a lot of new fans of your wines. So we'll send out the link to your website with the replay of this tomorrow, so people can get a hold of you or go to the website if they want to. And then next month, the email should be going out next week. We have a really small producer, a fun one. She was referred to me by Miguel Lepe. You may remember Miguel from Lepe Cellars, who we featured last year. Young winemaker named Anna Bassett. And we're going to be featuring her label called Bonifacia Wines. She sources a lot of fruit from up in Mendocino. She's actually based in Ukiah right now. But really, really fun wines. We're going to have a Zinfandel. We're going to have a Tiroldigo from Italy, which I love. We're going to have our Chenin Blanc. And there's one other varietal that I can't remember what it is. It might be a Grenache, I think, something like that. But I'll send the email out. It'll go out in the next few weeks, or next few days, I should say. And hopefully we will see everybody next month. All right. Thank you again to James and Manoli. We appreciate it.
You guys,
and
cheers.
Thank you so much. It was the wines were delicious. Yeah, the wines were fantastic. Really, really great.
One way. Good night.
All right. Thanks again, everybody. Have a good night.
Cheers.
Was to die for us.
So how to terminate this?